Welcome everyone to the Talking Points podcast. If you're watching the video version, you will see my very shiny forehead slowly coming into frame. Matt just wanted me to do this because I have a standing desk and it adjusts. So here we are.
It's that noise in the back as well. It's like this machine noise.
I feel for all the... Why are you crying? I feel for all the audio-only listeners having to listen to Matt's tears. But welcome. It was the 2022 Italian Grand Prix. We're recording this on a Sunday night. Matt's lost all composure completely, so we'll give him a minute, Aldas. I guess first of all, mate, did you enjoy it? What did you think? Just an overall arch thought.
It was a 4 out of 10 for me. I enjoy every single Formula 1 race because I'm an absolute nerd. Like, literally, I could watch the same grid finish in the same positions. I'd be like, oh, I'm buzzing, mate. Formula 1's on. But it wasn't the best race. I thought Zandvoort was actually a little bit better. I thought the way the race ended, it kind of actually, to be fair, it was kind of intriguing in a different way, but it kind of took the sting out a little bit. But yeah, if I was to give that race a rating, I'd say a 4 out of 10. I don't think it was that great. There was quite a lot of DRS trains in the middle as well, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But there were some storylines and some comebacks which were quite good. But yeah, 4 out of 10 for me, unfortunately.
What you saying, Amos? What do you think?
Yeah, I got to agree. I'll go 5 out of 10. It very much reminded me of the situation we had with Spa, where we had loads of people taking engine penalties, and us expecting this really great race. With all the faster drivers, arguably towards the back of the grid. And then when you've got that recipe there and then it doesn't really deliver, yeah. And I think also what happened towards the end obviously kind of spoiled it because it was building up loads and loads and then nothing really happened. So I think for me, it's got to be a 5 out of 10. But what would you rate out of 10?
Yeah, I was thinking, at the time I was a bit more optimistic straight after the race. I was thinking, maybe but actually, yeah, I think 5 is probably fair. I mean, we didn't see, as much as Max started P7 and finished ahead of Charles, we didn't actually see them two come together on track at all in terms of any battling because it was just a pit stop change in position. So yeah, there was a few moments, there were some odd moments throughout the race, but I think not obviously helped by the fact that we ended under safety car, which, does anyone remember when the last time we had a race end under safety car?
Nah, I can't remember at all. No, sorry, man.
I haven't got we might be nerds, but we don't know that. I'm sure
Brazil
some of you watching
Brazil 2012.
Really? Or are you just saying that?
No, I mean, no, there was definitely that one. In terms of technically, Spa 2021. I mean, listen.
You're not having that one. Let us know in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube when the last proper race to end under a safety car
Brazil
was.
2012.
But obviously, there was a lot more to the race than just the safety car. And I think first and foremost, we need to talk about a certain Dutchman. Not Max Verstappen, though. Nyck de Vries. Deputising for my darling Alex Albon. Get well soon. He'll be fine. It's just an appendix. That is actually quite bad, isn't it?
Just an appendix.
It's quite a serious thing if it's not treated quickly.
You make it sound like it's a paper cut. Do you know what I mean?
Doesn't it if you don't get that dealt with, it could blow up or something.
Basically that. Yeah. And it's all. And if this is here comes my farmer knowledge. And if I can remember correctly, obviously it's a pointless part of the body because it used to be where it used to process when you eat grass. And stuff like that. Whereas obviously we don't need it anymore, and it's now become defunct. So it's now it's a pointless body part, does nothing. So as soon as it goes skew with, need to get sorted quickly. But luckily he's all good.
But like he said himself, Aldas, it's a bit of weight saving. And look, as much as that takes away Alex's opportunity, which we knew that this was going to be a strong track for Williams, I think Nyck de Vries jumping in. What were your kind of expectations going into this one with Nick alongside Nick?
Straight away, first of all, I called it on the Dutch Grand Prix podcast. I knew that Williams. I knew Williams were going to be here. I said big expectations. I think Alex is going to score points. Big chance for Nicholas Latifi to kind of turn up and actually show something.
And you're wrong on both counts.
We'll talk about that, but I was right. But Williams were strong here. They had genuine pace. They weren't the slowest. I think Aston Martin was struggling a little bit more than them, but genuinely, I thought Nyck de Vries jumping in. I thought he would do a solid job because he's not completely cold. He did kind of warm up to the weekend. He had that Aston Martin stint. I know it's in a different car, but it still kind of gets you acclimatized to the session and kind of gets you acclimatized to the track. And he did kind of, also drive the Mercedes, earlier as well. So he's not completely cold, but I expected him to perform, and he did. I wouldn't say he exceeded my expectations because that's where I thought that car should be, and he did a great job. So the fact that he was on the pace, we'll talk about the Latifi side of it later on. Just the Nyck de Vries side, I thought he did a great job in quali. Once again, I am a bit of a quali merchant because I didn't get to watch it on Saturday. I was racing once again, so yeah, sorry
What
about
a
that. But
Obviously, this man shags carts.
But I did see the qualifying highlights, and like to see De Vries beat Latifi, I was like, that's a joke. I mean, it wasn't. I think he did it only on one run as well because he locked up in his last run. I think he was in the wrong brake setting and had a really weird off as well. So yeah, but overall, a great weekend for Nicholas Latifi, for Nyck de Vries. But yeah, I think he put himself out there on the shopping floor. Like he showed Williams exactly what he could do. Now they have data to compare him to Latifi, and yeah, he's done a great job in my opinion. And it seemed like everyone was really happy for him as well, which was great to see.
Yeah. It was good vibes all round. I mean, just before we jumped on this call, I watched it was Nick's kind of post race chat with Sky Sports, and he was saying like his dad was staying at his place in Monaco because Nick lives in Monaco as all drivers seem
as
to,
you do,
and then like drove down to Monza and then saw him and it was like it was very, very heartwarming stuff. And I think Nyck de Vries is a driver that, again, won F2, won Formula E, has done sports cars, has had a lot of success. And you know, we always talk about who deserves an F1 seat. I think he's earned the opportunity, and he certainly seized that opportunity today. But like you say, with qualifying, in terms of the big stories from qualifying, obviously Charles putting it on pole and Carlos being up there as well. Going into the race, I thought Charles would win, to be honest. But
have you been watching this season, mate?
Yeah, look, I mean, I thought the Tifosi would add an extra few horsepower, but they all that energy booing was going straight into Max's engine. It seemed.
God, yeah.
And we'll just crack on with the race. What did we think off the start? Because obviously, Matt, Ricciardo held position. Lando had a bit of a shocker off the start in the end. But I think for me, it was always going to be an uphill battle for the McLaren boys to kind of stay in position and maintain that. But they did a lot better than I thought they would.
Well, I mean, we got to remember, like, we also said this, like, last year. Like, if I was to tell you last year that it was going to be a McLaren 1-2 at Monza, you'd be absolutely having a laugh with it. And although last year it was a sprint race, like, the car seemed tailored to it last year. And I know this is kind of like a new breed of era, but I mean, like, you can't just sort of fault them with it. And obviously they were, like, gifted their positions because of all the mess of like all the grid penalties going on, when we only found out, you know, only until like 5 or 6 hours after quali that we actually figured out what the starting grid was. But I was actually quite like faithful of like where the positions were. And like, I honestly thought like if Lando kept within the tow, then like he would have been on for a podium. And that's not me just sort of bullshitting or like McLaren favoriting or anything like that. I genuinely thought they would have the pace because like, if you got slipstream, then you pretty much, we've seen what in the race, you're going to stick with them the whole entire time. But it just looked like from, Lando's onboard that like either the revs weren't high enough because he kind of just dropped off, and then he managed to get up again. And then I think he lost 3 positions, I think, before even getting the first corner. Whereas actually...
De Vries was ahead of him going into turn 1. He'd lost that many positions.
Exactly that. I think also, De Vries also just had a really good start as well with all his brakes on fire. That was one potential issue because he was on the formation lap going towards the grid. He was like really trying to get temperature into the brakes, and his left front brake started to smoke and it almost caught fire.
That'll calm your nerves.
Yeah, exactly.
Brakes on fire.
You know what? Like, I don't want to jump ahead, and it's not favoritism. I've got to give it to Daniel. Like, fair play to him for the race start.
Don't jump ahead. Don't jump ahead. We'll get to that.
What are you giving to Daniel? What are you giving to him, Matt?
Retirement of the race.
No. We're talking about the start of the race, and I'm saying like he did the job that he's meant to. He didn't make any mistakes, and he wasn't holding up anybody. And like eventually, like it just. He did what he's meant to do. So like, and that was the only thing really that kind of happened from it. Lando had a poor start, and the other driver actually did really well when we were used to him not doing that well. So there you go.
Can I just say, by the way, just to quickly interject here, Matt, you were not on the Dutch Grand Prix podcast, but there was some top-notch Ricciardo slander, and I know that you missed that on purpose, by the way. So just saying.
He knew what was coming. But no, you know what? Genuinely, I think going into this weekend, this is a track that Daniel knows how to get the best out of himself with. You can see he's clearly, still not comfortable in that McLaren car, but I think all things considered, yes, obviously gained massively from all of these kind of penalties. And also, boys, I think we should quickly talk about the penalties. Aldas, what do you think? What do you think the solution is? Do you think we're just going to have to deal with it as it is, or do you think there's a better Aldas inspired solution here?
It's a simple one, but it's got to be at least one more power unit component just per team. Like, it's got to be one more component of each engine part, because it's just getting a bit too ridiculous, especially it's not back-to-back races, but, 2 out of the 3 races where we genuinely don't even know the grid. Like, again, I missed qualifying, but it was kind of pointless anyway, because when I looked at the result, it was like completely different to what the starting grid was, so I didn't even miss anything. Like, it's...
The drivers didn't even know.
No. Did you see Gasly even tweeted, like, can anyone tweet me where I'm starting? It was just that was pretty good balance. I like that, Pierre. But yeah, it's a little bit too ridiculous. I get why there is such a big limit, on only 3 power unit components, because you want the teams to develop reliability in a way that, does kind of shake things up. So maybe add something to that point, but it's a balance, isn't it? It does give us a bit of a mixed up grid towards the end of the season. It kind of gives a bit of drama to the sport as well. Who's going to make it and who's going to keep all their power unit components. It does put more emphasis on reliability. So teams like Mercedes are actually, they're buzzing in terms of like their reliability throughout the season, but it doesn't look great. I think it makes it even more difficult for the casual fans, because it's like they probably don't understand it, and it still frustrates me. So to me, it is just give them one more power unit component. So 4 across the season for the entire power unit. And I think that's kind of a good balance. But yeah, that's kind of the only thing that I think they can change, because otherwise...
Is that enough, though?
I think it's also the issue that the reason I think they can't do it at the moment is basically due to the cost cap. That's how they've got in your allotted amount. That's what in theory you should fit into your budget. But then anything extra from that, obviously, there's going to be additional resource. So if you were to add on an extra engine sort of unit or whatever it could be, in theory you shouldn't be then exceeding those budgets, because if you've got a set amount, I think that's the main reason why they can't really be doing that.
I think they are actually increasing it, because there's more races next year, so they are raising it, but that's only because of
there's only 2 more races.
It's still not enough.
Because I agree. I think it would be interesting to see with 4 next year, because you've got 22 races this year, divided by 3 is just over 7. So you're expected to, if you're not going to jump into that allocation, you need to get at least 7, which is quite a lot. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So there's a little bit less, right? But it's still quite a lot to ask. And you like to think reliability upgrades are allowed with these engines going forwards. Not performance upgrades, but reliability ones are allowed. So I think that's part of the solution. But for me, I just think the bigger part of this whole thing is just the lack of clarity and the lack that the fact that there was so little in terms of concise communication. You can't tell me that there's not a way that the FIA can come up with a system, right? If you get, because all of these penalties are human-made penalties, right? People have been like, right, you need that penalty because you've taken that. You can't tell me that there's not, like F1, the richest sport in the world, cannot develop an automated system, right? All right, you have that penalty, press, and then it automatically rejigs. Now, obviously, when we were watching qualifying, which you didn't, Aldas, because you're a highlight merchant, there was, apart from Crofty occasionally mentioning, a lot of people got engine penalties, there was nothing in the graphics, nothing to clearly and concisely showcase, okay, so Lewis has qualified P5 or whatever, but actually he'll be starting P18. Like, for me, Matt, there's no reason why that system can't exist.
Oh yeah, I mean, like these things, like you could easily make that in like a spreadsheet using like Excel coding and like that stuff you can already kind of do. And I think like the biggest thing that the F1 coverage missed out on is like what you mentioned there, is trying to explain all these penalties to like a new viewer. So like you could say, Lewis Hamilton, the most he will qualify, although he is qualifying against 19 other drivers. They should sort of say like, well, the maximum he can get on the grid is like maybe P8 because he's got this engine penalty, and live show you, okay, here's where they've actually qualified, like one timing tower, but here's what it now means with the penalties. Because obviously, it's hard to keep track, but when you've got that data there, it should be pretty clear cut. Like, it's not like, obviously, only after qualifying, some people might want to take more penalties or whatnot. But then even going back to that, like maybe adding on like an extra allowance is one answer, or is there like another avenue we can look down onto? Maybe you have to start from the pit lane, not right necessarily to the back of the grid, or does your penalty cross over to multiple races? Because we've seen it before, where someone's got like a 25 place grid drop, and so obviously that just means to just go back to the back of the grid. So then they've actually capitalised on not utilising the most of their penalty. So is there like a discussion there, Tomo? Do you think of like maybe carrying over penalty which hasn't been used? Because basically it's like first come first, isn't it? Like if you've got like a 15 place drop because of your engine, and then your teammate then does it after you.
That just confuses people more in the next race. Like it just, I don't know.
Yeah, I just think they need to, like, whatever the system they decide on, like they just need to make it clear. And I think that the fact that you had the drivers tweeting about it, the fact that no one knew what was going on. You even had like Jonathan Wheatley still like having a moan just before the race started, being like, "Oh, we see if we can get Max P4." Not that he needed it in the end. I just think the clarity thing would clear it up, and there's definitely a solution because we're always going to get this at this kind of time of year when we're into the second third of the season. You're going to start seeing engine penalties. So just make it happen, F1.
Just make better engines.
We have to remember also that this was with the E90 fuels. Like this was a brand new kind of, not a brand new engine period, but there was a lot more reliability issues at the beginning of the season because they were getting used to these brand new fuels, and so yeah, that's why we didn't have as much of it in 2021 because the teams had to adapt so much more for the power units this year. So I think that kind of plays into it as well. Maybe next year, once they're much more, once they've had all the research and all the development, maybe it won't be as bad.
And that's why I think a knee-jerk reaction, like, again, exactly as you say, I think we need to take that context into account. They are just getting on the top of these new, they're not new engines from the ground up, but they are very different engines. But someone who didn't have an issue with their engine, certainly, was a Mr. Max Verstappen. Because, I mean, Matt, I was quite shocked of how quickly he was able to make progression. Even passing your boy Daniel Ricciardo before they even had DRS, man. With that pretty chunky rear wing as well they had on the Red Bull. Like, it was crazy.
I think the Red Bulls, the Red Bulls were the only ones who didn't have a proper modified, like, proper flat wing. It was proper huge. But, I mean, like, I think it's him and that car. It's just, they're so, like, whether the drivers always talk about being so connected with the car where you're not even actually thinking about like it's almost like the perfect lap, as it were. And I think Max has pretty much got that now with his car. I mean, we've known this now for the past few races that, like, even in the opening stages of the races, he doesn't even need DRS or even ERS to like overtake anyone on track. And he just seemed to be like in the league of his own. And we really saw the extent of that when I think Leclerc had to pit for the first time. Then we saw the extent of like the actual interval between himself and Verstappen, and that's where you could actually see, okay, here's a data of how quick he's been just coming through the pack and just getting far ahead. It's a shame though we're not seeing it on the other side of the garage now. Unfortunately, I feel like we're starting to see a repeat of what's happened last year. Because like if you could have just imagined both those drivers being at the same level as Max with that sort of the control they have with the car, I feel that team will kind of be pretty much unstoppable, particularly this season. But yeah, I don't know about you, but like it's a bit of a weird one because it's like a boring narrative because Max is dominating so much, but it's also, you should be congratulating it because that means that the team and the driver himself have worked so hard to get to this point where now they're making it look easy, but obviously that's going to ignore years and like so much hours put in from the team back at the base.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, the Mercedes car's dominated for 8 years, and it's been like half a season of Max Verstappen, not even complete domination. And it does you quickly get to that stage, Aldas, where it feels like it's just inevitable that he's going to win.
It's almost, inevitable is the right word. I mean, I think I tweeted this actually, like, it doesn't matter where he starts, like, anything that's thrown at him, any grid position that they put him in 20th. And it just seems almost like, he's surefire to win. I think even Leclerc, actually, in the post-quali interview, one of the questions he was asked, and obviously Max was starting back at, like, was it P7 or something, P8? And, or P9. But yeah, basically, even Leclerc was asked, like, do you think Max is gonna win it? And he's starting miles back, and Leclerc's like, he was just saying, he's gonna be in the fight. He's gonna be in the fight, obviously. So it's incredible at the moment. And they seem to turn up like with a Monaco spec or something, just full downforce at Monza or something. But yeah, it's just Max. Obviously, in the RB18, they've fine tuned it so well across the season. they've developed it. Clearly, it's swung a little bit more towards Max, but again, the law of averages, even though it might have swung away from Sergio Perez, in terms of the points that they're scoring, because Max is getting all of these wins, it's worth it. So yeah, Max is just absolutely smashing it. And yeah, Adrian Newey does it again. I mean, he's just unreal as well. I mean, I know there's like this whole like Adrian Newey merchant thing going around. I remember people like put Seb under that tag, but there's a lot of Adrian Newey merchants over the past like 30 years, like Nigel Mansell, Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve. There's a lot of Adrian Newey merchants. So yeah, credit to that guy, and obviously credit to the guy that's actually performing out there on the track and winning from literally everywhere. Unstoppable. It almost seems like a foregone conclusion now, but it's still amazing to watch. This generational driver, and it was another great performance in Monza. I think even if the race wasn't as exciting, you can't take, and whatever happened at the end, you can't take anything away from Max. He put Ferrari under pressure. The Ferrari fans, I tell you, were going to be sweating when they saw Max chasing down Leclerc after about 5 or so laps. So it's all credit to him.
It's a well-earned victory, regardless of how it finished. But yeah, I think the race kind of settled in. Obviously, you had Max making his way through. Carlos was also making good progression throughout the race, more so than Lewis. Obviously, I think you could really see where that Ferrari and that Red Bull just have that bit extra performance, and it was taking a bit more time for Lewis to come through. But then, obviously, on lap 12, I think it was, Sebastian Vettel, which we haven't seen many Mercedes failures from kind of a PU point of view. And I think it was, let me just check. Yeah, it was engine for Seb. That obviously caused Ferrari to pull Charles in on his soft tyres onto mediums. Now, it's easy to say in hindsight the fact that Charles had to stop again before the safety car came out. Do we think it was a mistake to not put the hards on, or did the hards just not have performance, I guess? Because it's easy in this instance to be like, oh, Ferrari squandered it, blah, 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 which they have on many an occasion. But also, on some occasions, you just got to put your hands up and be like, whatever Ferrari would have done, they probably would have still got passed by Max. Was it one of them, do you think that?
Yeah, I think it's like, I personally thought the call to jump into the pits, I was like, you know what, fair play. They're going aggressive with it, maybe going for a 2-stop, as it were. But the issue is, I think, obviously in hindsight, all of us must have think like, go onto the hards, it'll be fine. But from everyone's sort of data, what they prior learned, the hards just weren't ever getting to that optimum temperature. That's why everyone loves riding the mediums like this season, because they can get up to temperature good, it can stay there, and it won't deteriorate that much. Whereas the hards, it's a bit more of a risky strategy. So I can see why Ferrari did go to the mediums. However, and I do think the call for them to go into the pits under VSC, which kind of ended quite quickly as well.
It ended before he got out the pitch, yeah.
Yeah. So like he took it pretty quickly. Like I know there's a bit of time delay on the radio message when they're telling him to box. There is a bit of like a 20-second or so delay. But no one else, I don't think anyone's really properly capitalized on it. So I thought the call was good, but obviously in hindsight, it's easy to be like going to the hards. But yeah.
I think it depends what data they had, because the problem they had in Hungary, where they obviously went onto the hards, is that it was a bit incompetence by the team in terms of they didn't gather the data in the limited time that they had, both during FP1 before FP2 was obviously kind of washed out a little bit. They didn't get the data on the hard tyres, so they were like, yeah, let's just put Leclerc on, and ultimately it was a disaster. If their data said that, yeah, the mediums are going to make it, till the end of the race, then that's just ultimately what their data and what their strategy said. I think he was the only person, he was the only driver to pit actually on lap 12 for that under that VSC. So to me, I didn't mind the pit. And also it was interesting with the hard tyres, because at that moment it was only Perez that had moved on to the hard tyres on lap 7. So
yeah, that was really early.
Even looking at what Perez did, it's kind of difficult to see whether the hard tyres were the right call or not. I actually didn't mind it. I thought that what I thought from that moment is that at least they kind of got, that 10-second buffer of that they've cut that down from what would be a regular stop. So that's fine, but you need to commit to the 2-stop early. It was very obvious very quickly that Leclerc was not going to make it on the one. I don't think he would have made it on the 1-stop, because I think Max would have had too much pace, but I also come back to the fact I think Max just had too much pace full stop. Like any strategy Ferrari would have done, like I think Max would have done the opposite. Like if Leclerc just carried on, Max would have pitted and maybe still overtook him. So yeah, it was a tough one. I don't mind them going on the mediums if they think that the hard maybe wasn't their tyre, but yeah, ultimately I think Max was just too good.
Yeah, because I think the Charles pitted lap 13. Max didn't pit on the same tyre on the soft till lap 26. So the fact that they had Sergio out on the hard tyres, I think Red Bull probably had enough data from Sergio to know that the hard probably wasn't the tyre to be on. at the time. But obviously,
and it wasn't as if Sergio like stormed through the field, by the way, on the hard tyres.
No, exactly. He was seemingly struggling a bit on them. I think Carlos made his way past Sergio, didn't I? I seem to remember that at some stage.
Yeah.
But one driver I want to talk about who had a surprisingly poor race and didn't end up finishing in the end, and I want to come straight to you, Aldas, because he is your boy. Fernando Alonso in the Alpine. I was expecting big things from Alpine this weekend. I thought, that car's very good in a straight line. With all the penalties around him, I was like, I think Alonso's got a great shot at top 5, if not top 3. And just nowhere pace-wise. You heard the wow on the radio, right? That was pretty... that almost gave me GP3 engine vibes.
Fernando knew. Listen, this guy's been around. He's been around many... This guy's been around many...
He's been around the block,
exactly,
mate. Yeah.
He's experienced many GP2 engines and many engines that blow up. And what I found hilarious is that he straight away radioed his team, is like, guys, something's wrong here. Are we like down on power? And his race engineer was like, no, it's all good, mate. It's all good. The day is fine. The day is fine. And he goes like, wow. And then literally, what is it? Like on lap 30
31.
Yeah, lap 31, it goes kaput. And I'm just like, of course it does.
Water pressure, apparently.
Part of me really was thinking it was going to be like him just insulting the Alpine car, because obviously he's leaving. Because it's like, wow, what a piece of shit.
But I do find it kind of strange though. I mean, the driver's telling you something is not wrong, and the race engineer's like, yeah, data's good, mate. Data's good. Just keep going. But anyway, Alpine, a bit disappointing to be honest. The pace wasn't quite. I'm not quite sure what it was actually, because maybe potentially it was the tyres, and he really struggled to even keep up with the McLaren. So. Yeah, ultimately, I think even Esteban Ocon didn't have a great race. So clearly both cars didn't quite really work, which was very surprising because we know from, tracks like Baku and also Spa as well, they're really good in a straight line.
Speed,
but there was something about Monza is actually quite specific in terms of like the characteristics or in terms of what this track has, the kind of like the slow speed corners, only really the Parabolica is kind of the really high speed corners. So something about that car just wasn't working around there. And if anything, Fernando, I still think he would have finished in the points, to be honest, because I think he would have been ahead of De Vries and Zhou. So, unfortunately, his 10-race point-scoring streak has stopped. But
it's over.
It's over. But, a bit disappointing. Again, more bad luck for Fernando. But, I think that Alpine need to kind of work out why was it not working? Was it the tyre life? Was it the car just wasn't in the right window? Because Esteban Ocon struggled just as much. So, bit disappointing for sure. But and also, McLaren are making moves. Like, they are still within kind of touching distance of Alpine and the constructors. So, I'm not sure that fight is over yet.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the... which you'll appreciate this, Matt. If it wasn't for his engine failure, then there would have been both McLarens in the points, which,
decent points as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think they need it if they want to put up a fight against Alpine. Something I want to mention happened shortly after obviously Leclerc came in for his second pit stop, put on the softs. Hamilton's double overtake.
Wow.
Now... whoa. Oh. You, Aldas, specifically, right? When I said Hamilton's double overtake at Silverstone was great, you were like, it was just cars in front battling. It wasn't even a proper overtake. This is the same thing. It was just as good, no?
It's not.
No, it's not. Why is it not the same thing?
Because they went off the track, whereas here in Monza, they were on the track.
So there's two cars still battling. Still battling in front. Why does it matter if they got off track or not?
On this occasion, Hamilton changed his line, so then he had a better launch going off the corner.
Which is what he did last time.
No, he didn't. In Silverstone, he just drove the normal racing line.
Did you watch Silverstone, mate? Are we thinking of the same overtake?
You can't. This was a great. We all agree it was a great overtake.
Hell yeah, it was so good, so good.
But it's opportunistic. He put himself in the right place to capitalise on the cars in front of him.
But the difference is, in Silverstone, the difference is that I think it was Sergio Perez that forced Leclerc off. So I think it was Leclerc was actually off the track or something. So Hamilton just did his regular line.
Yeah, but you carry the speed. You carry the speed.
Yeah, but he would have carried the same speed even if they weren't there. He just avoided them. Here,
whereas
he
took a completely different line. He had to go a proper different line to it. Like you see on the onboard, but even when he's going into the corner, he's almost going full lock on the curb because he knows he has to go all the way to the right.
Don't make me get up the replay of Silverstone. Lewis didn't take the racing line because how could he have taken the racing line when there were cars on the outside of the exit? Like he had to take a more compromised line. No, one car was off the circuit, not both. Yeah, he didn't take the racing line.
There you go. So one car was off the circuit, the other car was pretty much on the edge. In this scenario, both of them were on the circuit.
So
in front of each other.
Yeah,
on
but he
the
didn't take
slowest
you said he took the racing line. He didn't take the racing line. He took he took a compromised exit out of that corner both times.
They're different overtakes.
Right?
They're different overtakes.
Let us know in the comments. Are you Team Toro or Team Fraud? All right.
As Monza is the slowest corner, it's basically going from like a standstill, and so it basically was almost like a drag race from that point. And he had the better launch because he was on the newer tyres. Whereas in Silverstone, they're already carrying so much speed.
And they're also completely different corners as well. The Monza one is purely a traction corner. What I really liked about the overtake actually is that he was reading them like a book. He knew exactly what, Lando was coming out the pits, obviously on kind of cold tyres. He read them like a book. He knew that they were going to, Gasly was struggling and Lando was going to try and get the kind of his slipstream. So he took on the exit of turn 1, he took a completely different line purely on acceleration and even boxed Lando in. Like, Lando had no place to go because Gasly was a little bit slower and Lewis was already there. So it was just a really smart move where, like, it looks easy, but that's because he anticipated and put his car in the absolute best place of where he needed to be. It was just
a fantastic description of the Silverstone overtake there, That's very good. Right, next little scrap.
Lando on fresh tyres in Silverstone, yeah? Lando came out fresh tyres.
Yeah. I will go on to Latifi Schumacher, right? I just briefly want to talk about this little scrap, right? Because
that was funny.
I was looking afterwards. The Williams, no DRS. The Williams was the second quickest car, right, behind the Red Bull, as far as I've seen in terms of data. I could be wrong. And the Haas was the slowest. What did you make of the Schumacher Latifi little scrap? Because Mick did lock up, but Latifi gave him a lot of room. Do you think Latifi owed him the room? I suppose.
I think the move. I think the one you're talking about is into turn 1, right?
Yeah, it's turn 1. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually thought that move was pretty decent. Yeah, he did lock up, but also he didn't hit Latifi. He didn't go into the gravel, kept the car on track, and I mean, like, fair play. Actually, was a decent move, but just do that for the rest of the season and with with all the other people you're driving with, and
there's got to be isn't there a bit of Latifi tax on that though? Do you know what I mean? Like, no, it was, to be honest, it was actually quite a good little. It was a good little battle. Although I will say, I was surprised Latifi actually got back past going into. I think it was the variant. What was it, like, just before the Lesmos? But I will say it was actually a really good dive bomb by Mick Schumacher because he locked up. He looked like he was sailing right into the side of Latifi at the last second, got off the brakes, and the car just gripped up perfectly. So he got the move done there. But then Latifi got back ahead of him going into the next phase, which I was really surprised at. I don't know how that
Williams a rocket ship, mate.
Clearly. Well, I mean, he still finished second to last, mate, so I can't be that much of a... Or is it the driver? I mean, we'll get to that in a second as well.
Latifi just needs to race ovals. Right, come on then. Let's talk about it. Both, I guess, yes or no. Was the race finishing under safety car? Nah, it's not a yes or no question, is it? It's far too nuanced for that. What am I? F1 Twitter. Yeah. Okay, so basically, yellow flag came out. Safety car. They wanted to push Daniel's car away, but it was in gear, wasn't in neutral, so they weren't able to push it. So they had to bring out the cherry picker to pick the car up, take it off track. Boom. By the time that was all done, we were on the last lap, so we weren't able to carry on racing. Aldas, thoughts? Talk to me.
Oh boy. In terms of what actually happened, I think first of all, let's just get something straight. It happened at the end of the race. That always puts the FIA, that always puts decisions in at a tricky point. It was kind of, I mean, the race was over, let's be honest, as if Leclerc was going to overtake an 17 second gap. So the race was over, if you want to compare it to like Abu Dhabi 2021. But the thing is,
who would want to do that, Aldas? No one.
Yeah, who'd want to do that? Crazy. But I think, to be honest, in terms of the whole red flag thing, I did think that maybe, in hindsight, the red flag might have been the right thing, but at the same time, it does set a bit of a strange precedent at first, because the way the situation developed is that at first it looked like, his car is just stranded, they'll push it back, no need for a red flag, no need to kind of escalate the situation for one car, because then it kind of sets a bit of a strange precedent, is every single stranded, single car just going to be a red flag? So, I will put that kind of into the mix, but it very clearly kind of turned out that this car's going to be very difficult to take away, because number one, the marshals spent a good 1 or 2 laps trying to move it, and then they couldn't, so you're running out of time. This entire time is just getting more and more pressurized. And then the whole, when the cherry picker was brought out, then it was kind of like, yeah, this race is not going to get restarted because at the speed that it's going. And also where there was actually a mistake in terms of where the safety car came out and which car it picked up, because it didn't pick up Max, it picked up George, which was a little bit strange. So that is definitely something that the FIA need to look at, because then that meant that Max had to do another lap and kind of catch up. So that took away even more time. And by the time the whole lap cast thing happened, I think it was like lap 51 at that point, and we knew that we were going to finish behind the safety car and there wasn't going to be any racing. So the question, if you're asking, should there be a red flag? In hindsight, maybe yes, maybe that's what we need. Should the end of the race, and should we prioritize entertainment at the end of the race and to make sure that a race does not finish under the safety car? I think that's a question that actually should be posed to the drivers, to the teams, to the fans as an open discussion, because otherwise that should be a rule. Like, if there is a certain amount of laps or a percentage of the race left and an incident like that happens, should that just be standard procedure? Like, a red flag so that we get an exciting finish. But if that is, what people want, I think that should be a rule. So that's not necessarily open into interpretation, but it should be a hard and fast rule. In terms of what happened today, I don't mind that they threw out the safety car and kind of left it, because we ran out of laps. Like I said in Abu Dhabi in 2021, what should have happened is that the race should have just finished under the safety car because we ran out of laps. A race is a finite amount of laps, and if you want to add more than that, just creates even more trouble and even more controversy. So yeah, it was just a bad incident. There were little errors again by the FIA, like what happened with the safety car and some of the miscommunication that the commentary box even picked up on. But in terms of what happened, I'm not too mad about it, even though I think that going forward we can improve it, and I think the FIA should improve it.
Nah, I disagree. Matt. I'm sorry, man.
Go off.
For me, it should have been a red flag, and that's not from an entertainment standpoint. That's from a safety standpoint. So Daniel Ricciardo stops. I don't know if he left it in gear or if the car somewhat got beached. Either way, the marshals couldn't move it.
It wasn't Daniel's fault, I'm sure, Matt. I'm sure.
Whatever, I don't care. So basically, yeah, the way it works out, obviously, yeah, yellow flags, bring out the safety car when the car is literally still stuck onto the track. And so that is literally so then the marshals can see if they can push it or not. And once you've deduced that you can't move it, and then you need to bring out a different piece of machinery onto it, that's then straight away should be a red flag. And the reason it's a red flag for this scenario, maybe for a different track, is one, the car's actual position on track. That's a very thin piece of the racetrack. It's not like he spun off into the runoff or into the gravel. It was, and it wasn't that near the barrier
as well. It was quite far away from where the where they are, marshals.
Like obviously, it was in its position. It was next to the barrier, but where the exit where it could go was a bit of a far back to it. So the reason I'm always saying is like red flag is because we've seen horrific accidents before, like Jules Bianchi, the horrific accident that happened there, which some could argue could have been avoided if it was a red flag or whatnot, and for all unseen circumstances. And if you're having to bring machinery onto a racetrack, which is huge with dangerous machinery, like it's just huge and weighty, there could be, and we've seen stuff before behind drivers behind safety car, George Russell, where he spun out before from a pure accident. I know he was warming up the tyres, but stuff like this can happen, and it takes one small little mistake for then something like dramatically like upsetting to happen. And so then if you're having to put machinery onto the track, that's for me when I'm like, no, straight away red flag it, because like, as I said, it's on a small thin part of the circuit. I don't mind that the race ended up in the safety car. I fully agree that, like, yeah, you only got a certain amount of laps to go, but my choice of it being a red flag is not on a entertainment value. The same with Abu Dhabi when Latifi crashed. I also said that should have been a red flag, not for entertainment, because it's a risk to the drivers. In that case with Latifi, they had a load of dirt and dust and having to cover oil and check the barriers. And in this scenario, it's a car that's right next to the racetrack. But Tom, what's your thoughts on it, mate? Because I'm interested. Are you team red flag or team not red flag?
It's one of the right. You can't be chucking out red flags willy-nilly. So you want racing, you want things like a safety car does a job a lot of the time. There's no reason from my point of view that they can't analyze each track beforehand and be like, right, where if a car breaks down in a certain area, what is the level of, because look, it stopped on the inside of the track, so you're going to have to either push the car across the track to recover it or get a cherry picker to come in and drive across the track. There's no way of safely, because I agree that as soon as you're getting big machinery on that track, and we've seen it before, whether it's like Stroll trying to unlap himself, I think at Imola, where he almost hit some marshals, whether it is, like you say, with George in Imola, where he just dropped it under the safety car. Like, we forget, when the safety car's out, they're still going fucking quick. Like, that Bert Mylander is going like the clappers. He's going full send in that Aston Martin. Now, obviously, I'm sure he'll slow down and going past the cherry picker. But I don't know if you've seen the helicopter shot of, and you can see Nyck de Vries kind of like he doesn't see it, and he kind of brakes.
And that something is wrong with that. Yeah, like that especially I thought was super dangerous. I was surprised he wasn't actually looked at in terms of like he was almost like trying to like do a half overtake. I know that's not what he was trying to do, but it looked like it, and he was almost like really close to the.
I think he was probably unsighted, right?
And obviously, like the drivers they're being told where the accident is, right? And I think there was even a case where we were mentioned before where the safety car came out in the wrong position or held up the wrong position, and George overtook the safety car before I think he actually saw the lights to do that. Although that was the correct thing for him to do, I don't think he actually got properly instructed to go past. So that's one.
The message hadn't reached the teams yet. That's the problem. There was miscommunication there.
Yeah, so that's one scenario where a driver has made his own decision and not knowing things on track. There's another thing where, let's say the safety car is going past the incident, and you've got drivers who are now speeding up to catch at the back of the queue. It takes them one corner to go round the corner to be like, oh, here's everyone now. I'm going to quickly move to the side so I don't crash into the back of them because they're really slowed up, and then that's your issue there. So that's why I'm pushing for the red flag. Again,
they're still going quick under a safety car, and I just think when there is, to recover that car took it was 6 laps in here. It was 47 when Ricciardo broke down, and we didn't get the race restarted with 6 laps to go. So in that instance, I just think, the red flag is it's written in the rules, and this is one of those things where it's just like you've got the rules that are written in a certain way, but then you've also got the way that you, like all 3 of us and everyone listening and watching, what we want racing to be and what we think racing should be, and there's always going to be certain little things that we disagree on. But I think in this instance, like a red flag, when there is particularly around safety, and I agree with Abu Dhabi, there was fluid on the track from Latifi's car. There was damage to a barrier. I think in that instance, you chuck a red flag and you neutralise the race, and everyone still's got their position. Everyone can go on soft tyres and just go like the clappers to the end, because it's one of them that it's sport. Sport is entertainment. Entertainment is important. But part of what makes sport entertaining is the rules. You have to, if you just did what you wanted every time, it wouldn't have, because you wouldn't know what you're expecting. And I think that this is a good instance, and I'd argue the same about the whole super license thing, conversation around Colton Herta. I think this is a good instance to look at what is currently in place and question it. Because look, at the end of the day, last year, Abu Dhabi, a decision was made based on entertainment and not based on what is written in the rules. And everyone's meant to be following by the same rule book. So in this instance, I think the FIA, could they have shown a red flag? Yes. But once they did put the safety car out, I think, they followed the rules to the nth degree. But it was think, also way, a shit finish to a race.
On Abu Dhabi as well, like what even complicates the situation there is that there was articles before where Michael Masi basically just was saying that the teams agreed that in an ideal situation, they didn't want any red flags. So even that already muddied the water going into the race. But luckily we didn't have that, any kind of deals or anything going on like that. But I'm not necessarily like against the red flag. I'm not on team red flag or not. It's just I think every situation is so difficult. And I think what really made it even more complicated is that it was so late in the race, and because of that, because they lost 2 or 3 laps because the car wasn't able to push back. Yeah, by that point, the stewards just kind of thought maybe, they were kind of happy for it to end on the safety car and that it was going to be pulled back. But there was definitely a point where I thought, if that car straight away we knew that it couldn't be pushed back, I wouldn't have been opposed to the red flag because that's what it's there for. But again, every situation requires nuance, and you can't just throw out red flags.
Imagine this was the title decider. Imagine that there's
here we go.
Leclerc Verstappen. Imagine this was the title decider, right?
Leclerc, that's hopeful, mate. Leclerc Verstappen.
You can look at it, right, and you can look at how it's 6 laps of safety car at the end, and whoever wins the title doesn't matter. If it was a title decider, you can understand the pressure to get the race going again. But the problem with Abu Dhabi, right? The whole all cars have to overtake the safety car. No one gives a shit about that rule. No one cares about that rule out of that context. But it's a rule. And that's the point. It's a rule. If it's written down, it's a rule. That is how the sport should be officiated. I just think this is an instance where the use of a red flag, it's difficult because in one instance, I'm like, the sport shouldn't be officiated differently depending on the context, the circumstance. It should just be boom, boom, boom. You officiate in the same way all the time. But I think when it's like towards the end of a race, and whether it's the title decider or the first race of the season, I do think that especially what you don't want to happen, right, is them to rush to get the race going again, and then it causes a safety-related issue, right? Because they've rushed too quick because they've felt under pressure to get the cars going out again, and then something bad happens that could have been avoided. That's the problem. And it's like chucking a red flag. You feel like, I know, Matt, I just feel like it neutralises the race. That's what I'm saying.
I think, like, honestly, I think if as soon as the marshals had said to, like, race control, who they're constantly in comms with, had said to them, yep, there's no way we're moving this. We need to get the cherry picker out. As soon as that happens, that's when, like, right, they've determined, right, we're stopping the race on this lap here. Yes, you do get 4 more laps of racing, as it were. But again, it's always just, for me,
I don't think it would have been 4 by that point. I think it would have been like 2.
But still then,
yeah, I reckon it would have been a couple.
Even if that was just a couple, it's more of a safety issue because, like, you can talk hypotheticals of, oh, well, if you're doing a standing start or a rolling start, maybe someone's going to go for the dive bomb, someone's going to go for the lunge, but that's a driver's then taking the risk.
Yeah, that's racing.
Yeah, no problem with that.
That's racing. Whereas with this scenario, it's a third party intervening, which could cause damage to those drivers. And that's where I'm like, I wouldn't mind if it's a title contention, if it's the first race of the season, or even today, like Monza. I think, like, personally, yeah, a red flag is better for the safety, but then also it then obviously would help out with the entertainment side of things, because then it means, yeah, everyone's on brand new tires. Yes, it does means that whatever gaps you've created during the race have now been shrunk, but that's racing.
That's what a safety car does anyway.
Like, yeah, precisely. So in that case scenario, then it should be like, okay, well, if the race is restarted from 4 laps ago, or if it's just with a safety car's go, it should be no different then, basically.
Well, you can't add more laps, which is what NASCAR does. I think NASCAR it will add an extra 5 laps, or there's something around if a red flag drops, they'll like add fuel, and they will always finish the race under race conditions.
Yeah.
But maybe it is just, if there's a certain percentage left.
Or
Formula E, they have time at the end.
I was going to say, I was literally about to say that, Aldous. Yeah, like with Formula E, they have it a little bit like football, put on added time. So anytime you've lost during like when you're going through a virtual safety car, or when you're doing safety car, or even a red flag, they add on, in theory, what the time you've lost is as laps, because...
But that wouldn't work for Formula 1 because of the fuel. They're so fuel limited. Yeah, the
fuel would still be burnt off.
It only lasts the amount of laps. Like George Russell has to do fuel saving midway through the stint.
But then that's kind of well, maybe this is why we're having a chat about it, because maybe that might be something where you potentially, if there is like a red flag, maybe you can put in a certain amount of fuel back into the car, which has been determined by race control. Because in theory, if you think about it, the amount of laps are being put out there, it's not because of the FIA or because of what Formula 1 are wanting. It's because of the TV rights they give out. Because when you're selling your TV rights, you've only got a certain amount of time you have. That's why sometimes when you see a live broadcast, it'll go back to your 3 presenters who literally be like, thank you for watching, bye-bye, and then straight off because they haven't got any time to dabble anymore. So... it can be extended, and that's what Formula E have done. And I don't want to say like Formula E do it perfect, because they don't. But I'm saying though that you could, in theory, put some more into that if you needed to. I'm not saying in this scenario though that is the answer, because I think then obviously there's a certain threshold. I think where the amount of laps you do in a race is where you cannot no longer then do a standing start, is in like a rolling start.
I think this is a good point, though, to look. I think this is a good point to look at the rules, though. I mean, it's a good talking point in terms of like what Formula 1 should do going forward. Like, I think this was kind of like almost like a little lesson. We should, especially for 2023, like, sort out stuff like we've sorted out track limits for 2022. The white line defines the track, whatever the drivers think of that. I think this is a good opportunity to look ahead in terms of like, what should we do if there is an incident in the last 10% of the race or 10 laps? Like, again, I was not opposed to the red flag. I think it was just I think with 2 laps to go, the FIA just thought, right, I mean, let's just leave it under the safety car, and ultimately the race finishes how he finishes. That's what the rules are for us, and we haven't done anything wrong. So yeah, but I think it's a good thing for F1 and the FIA to look forward. Like maybe red flags, should they be used a little bit more? I mean, we remember like Baku 2021, obviously Max had that big crash and there was a lot more of the race to go. So it's much easier then to throw out a red flag when there's, I forget how many laps there was actually in Baku for that last little shootout. But yeah, I think it's something that Formula 1 definitely need to look at going forward.
Yeah, look, it's one of them that we all agree on the problem. No one wants to see a race finish under safety cars. Nobody wants to see that.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
You know, there's a discussion to be had around what the solution is. So again, if you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments below what you think the solution should be. Right, let's get into the head-to-heads, boys, because we're almost an hour in. We haven't even started on it. Right, first and foremost,
we haven't even got to Ricciardo versus Norris.
Red Bull, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez.
I feel like we can just get through these quite quick, can't we?
Yeah, it's Max. It's Max, isn't it? It's another great drive. Perez, it was okay. Kind of not great in the end of the day. It seems that gap's growing out of us. I feel like it's getting bigger.
It definitely is. But do you know what? Well, actually, the highlight of the race was what I saw on Twitter. What was it? Max's girlfriend Kelly. Even she was like yawning. I think he got caught yawning.
Yeah, behind Checo's dad.
That was quality, by the way. But no, it's got to be. And to be fair, I'm just looking at the championship now. Like when it comes to Sergio Perez, he's still third in the championship. He's doing exactly what a number 2 needs to do. You know, I think I said it's even last time. It was fun seeing him get these pole positions and wins earlier in the season. But he is the number 2, and he's doing the job that he needs to do as the number 2. So. Yeah, it wasn't a great one by Checo. It's not a great run of form for him, to be brutally honest, but it is what it is, and it's got to be Max.
Any thoughts on Checo, Matt?
I kind of really said it already earlier, haven't I? Just like it seems like a little bit of a repeat of last year. The gap is starting to build up a bit. It's more than race pace, really, that he's struggling with. But again, it could be, obviously the car being tailored to Max, but at the same time, I don't want to keep saying that excuse because it's a bit like, we'll just deal with it then. I
think Mercedes getting closer.
Just go faster. Drive faster.
Yeah, exactly that.
I have that issue sometimes. For all the way on the throttle. Try it, Checo. It'll work.
It's because you can't reach the pedals out.
Trust me, bro.
In the last five races, Max has won. Checo's finished 4th, 5th, 2nd, 5th, 6th. So, yeah, not the best. All right, Ferrari.
Can we talk about their livery, by the way? Obviously, 75. Go
on then. Go off. What are you thinking?
Go on. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I quite like the yellow vibe as like a one-off.
The rear wing was fantastic.
Oh, it was so nice. Yeah. The black and yellow on the rear wing. I think they need to keep that for 2023. But first of all, I was actually shocked that they did it because Ferrari, we know, are kind of like, they're much more reserved. When it comes to Red Bull, they'll easily do like some special livery. But it was cool to see. I thought as a one-off, it was quite nice. I thought that the helmet was absolute chaos, by the way. Both of them yellow. Like, I had no clue who was who, but... And also, the 1-to-1 replica, did you guys see the price online?
My days.
18 grand.
Yeah, I even saw like mini helmets. The normal mini helmets for Leclerc are like 150, and the special edition
720.
Yeah.
How many Squarespace integrations is that, Tom?
When I saw Leclerc put that out, I was like, I love that. I think I might actually have to buy this mini helmet. And then I tweeted that and then immediately checked the price. I was like, oh God, no.
Yeah, it's not many.
So yeah.
I need more Squarespace integrations. Get them in.
This podcast is No, it's not really. That was vibes. Yeah, I didn't really like the livery on the car too much. It was just, I like the rear wing. I don't understand why they don't have Ferrari on the rear wing anyway. Yeah. Because they don't have anything on the rear wing.
I think that for me, that's the one thing I was about to say. Like, it seems weird whenever we have the rear shot on the onboard camera looking back. It feels like there should be a sponsor there, but they don't need it, obviously. So, but I think, that yellow Ferrari logo on the back needs to stay for next season. But the rest of it,
the best.
I just wasn't really a fan. I also the driver overalls, in yellow, it just didn't sit right.
It doesn't look right, does it? I didn't mind the overalls, but it doesn't look right with Ferrari, like seeing them in yellow overalls. But maybe it's because it was a one-off.
Yeah, the pit crew looked like minions.
They did. Oh, those! It reminded
me of the camel camel tobacco liveried car from before. But I don't think the pit crew were in yellow at that point. But it just not for me.
But as for the drivers, which is the more important point, probably. To be fair, I think Carlos, all things considered, I think coming from where he did, I mean, Charles started first and finished second. Carlos kind of made his way out through the field. I thought Carlos did a very good job. I don't think you could have expected too much more from him. I think, George was far enough ahead that he wasn't going to challenge him. So I don't really know. What do you two think? Do you have a strong opinion either way?
Not really. I mean, considering Sainz, started, was it 18th? I think he started
in
the
front
end?
of Hamilton, 18th.
And then to come, I think he finished to 4th. And I think he was only
I'm going to give it to Carlos.
I think he was only 10 seconds away. I would say though, obviously in qualifying, he was, I think it was 2 or 3 tenths behind Leclerc, I think. But at the same time, he already knew, I think when with those qualifying sessions, when you're taking a penalty, it's kind of well, do you really want to push yourself to try and get the millimeter correctness when you already know you're going to have a bad penalty? But yeah, no, I think I'll give it this one to Carlos because I saw some good moves actually going through. Also the move on Perez as well, going for a little dive into that.
Yeah,
that
was a good one.
That. So, and it's actually been, and it's compared to how he started the season when we were really bashing him of constantly the joke of him constantly going into gravel and stuff, whereas now I think he's
picked it up.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'll give this one to Sainz as well.
I think Carlos Sainz is a really clever driver. He knows, and he's also very adaptable as well because he was analysing the problems at the beginning of the year. He knew that he was uncomfortable with the car.
Knowledge.
He has wheel knowledge, no doubt about it. He's driven for so many teams now as well that he's driven different iterations of cars. So yeah, he was able to adapt, and I've been really impressed with how he's brought the season back. I mean, he really closed it up to Leclerc in the championship, but I'm still going to go with Charles just because he had the pace on him all weekend. He had the pace on him in qualifying over most of the practices, I think, as well. And ultimately in the race, I mean, how much... It depends what you value, really. Do you value a driver like Charles in terms of he didn't really make that many mistakes? You can say about the strategy, was that him, was that the team? Or do you prefer the comeback drive? The amazing kind of comeback drive from 18th to 5th. So it's close, but I'm going to go to Leclerc. And at least they got a Ferrari on the podium, because if there was no Ferraris on the podium, oh my God. It would have been a shocker.
Imagine the booze after that.
That would not have been pretty. All right, Mercedes, Hamilton, Russell. I guess a kind of similar tale to Ferrari. You had one driver who was kind of up the front and kind of held position pretty much, and another making their way through. And for the same reason as Carlos, I'm going to give this to Lewis, because especially given that Mercedes isn't the car that Ferrari and Red Bull have, yet Lewis was still able to make up the places. I think he had to work harder than Carlos did to make those positions. That beautiful double overtake that we all love. I'm saying Lewis. Boys.
Yeah, I think I've got to go Lewis as well. I think what we're really noticing here though is that both George and Lewis, they are pretty much on equal sort of pace, I would say. Obviously Lewis, I think he outqualified Russell in this case, but there wasn't that much in it. And so a lot of times, yeah, and there's a lot of times we can do hypotheticals of but if there wasn't a penalty, would Lewis be ahead of George? And I think we can just see relative now, really. George started third. No, did he start third? No, he started second.
He was on the front row, almost got Leclerc as well into T1. I was buzzing.
Started second, ended third. Yeah, I think because obviously everyone just kind of drove away from him because everyone's still banging on that the Mercedes is going to bounce back. It's it's not. It's there's no magical. Everyone's dreaming of this big upgrade coming soon. It's no, Mercedes
the flexi floor technical directive. It's going to be worth 2 seconds.
Everyone keeps banging on. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Aldas, you getting excited about George almost overtaking Charles. In Fast and the Furious when he's I almost had you. And it's you never had me, you never had your car. It's the same vibes, mate. Come on.
Everyone keeps banging on that, Mercedes are going to bring an upgraded part and they're going to really bounce back. And even 2 days ago, 2 days ago, I was in a random ass taxi.
Who's they?
Who's they? Is it just F1 Twitter, Matt?
Taxi drivers. That's it.
A taxi driver 2 days ago.
Uber bias.
He was what do you do? And I was telling him about it. And he was that Mercedes. Don't worry though. Next race he'll win it. I'm he's not.
He'll be fine. Yeah, he'll sort it out next week. Lewis will get a few more horsepower out of that motor. He'll do it himself, mate. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
Easy as that, mate. Easy as that.
Who are you giving it to, Adas? I guess you've got to give it to George, haven't you? By the logic you gave Ferrari, no?
No, the difference is that Lewis actually had the pace over George in qualifying. So Leclerc had the pace to me over Sainz the entire weekend. Sainz just had a good comeback drive. I think Lewis had the pace over George in qualifying, and I think he would have finished ahead of him. He got a little bit bogged down during the first kind of stint, I think, in traffic. It took him quite a long time to get up to P14, P13, but that second half of the race was just incredible. The way, he kind of got through the traffic on fresh tyres as well. And again, the difference why I'm going to go with Lewis is that in qualifying. He did have the pace over George, and ultimately that's why I think, again, George, by the way, did a great job. I'm talking as if like it's one-sided or something. These guys have been like on the same level almost the entire season, which I think is amazing for Mercedes. I think it's amazing for both of them, but this one I'm going to go to Lewis but George also did a fantastic race, missed the consistency yet again. Did you see that Did you see that picture of him on the podium with like the crowd in the back? Oh, it was just vibes. I loved it.
I'm just literally looking at the results on qualifying here between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. It's 0.2 of a second. Like that is so tiny. Like
But I do think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think Lewis didn't have a toe. I think George did have a toe.
You are correct. Lap. Yeah. The way Lewis put it is like it's his turn if he wants to do it, and then Lewis was just on his normal program. He was saying so.
I was becoming highlight merchant, so I've got to take your word for it.
Lewis has been, I think, since he stopped fannying about with car setups. I think Lewis has been on top. So, but yeah, I mean, George has been great as well. No question. Right. Next, let's talk about let's talk about McLaren. Now, good weekend for Ricciardo. Was it better than Norris? No. So Lando still takes the dub.
But you know what? Matt? No, genuinely, I'm going to go. I'm overruling. I'm going to go first. It was actually a really good weekend by Daniel. Like, this is the level that I think if they were able to perform at this level, not in terms of where the car is, because the car just kind of came alive for both of the drivers, but they were close the entire weekend. Like, this was a really good race for Norris. It was a really good race for Ricciardo. I thought what he did in the first stint, by the way, was unbelievable. To keep Pierre Gasly behind him the entire time.
Yeah, agreed.
I thought that was incredible. I don't know if the AlphaTauri just didn't have any top end, even with DRS, by the way. I don't know what they did to turn up the wick on that McLaren, but yeah, that was great. And I thought he obviously would have scored points as well, and some decent points. So a disappointing end to Ricciardo, but this was arguably, maybe with Australia, his best performance of the year. But it just goes to Lando. I think Lando, the entire time, had a bit more pace in his pocket, waiting for that clean air. And when he did get it, eventually he was kind of gone, to be fair.
Matt looks shook.
Absolute bollocks what I'm hearing here. Like, it's just... This is
come on then. Oh, this will be good.
It's the first time I've had F1 TV Pro where you can see all the onboard views.
Oh, here we go. He's got all the data.
I was breaking down the numbers.
No, because I didn't want to just just see what someone's tweeted. I want to actually hear, because obviously what's really good about it, and this is not an ad, by the way. Basically,
I wish it was.
Yeah. Get it with Surfshark. No, sorry. So on the onboards, you hear the sound, but also you hear all the team radio uncensored. That's how you know all the people clip up the uncensored radios at the end on the YouTube videos and stuff like that. And basically, I could see exactly what's happened to Ricciardo's race, and it's just the McLaren strategy just going up the wall. Obviously, yes, he retired at the end. That wasn't his fault, and arguably it could be McLaren's fault.
It was his fault. Let's just say it was his fault for bans, you know?
So first of all, we've got to remember, Lando made multiple mistakes. He had a shit start. He also went off at turn 1 as well. Not on the first lap. It was in lap 10 or 11. I think he was battling the Alpines. So
he overtook Fernando as well. I remember that.
Yes, he did. And then he also tried to overtake him before and he went off the runoff, so didn't really work out for him. And also Alonso had a bad car, so... But yeah, you're forgetting the fact he made mistakes during the race, which Ricciardo didn't. Ricciardo had to cover off Gasly, who did a stupidly early pit stop, so McLaren boxed him to cover the undercut, which he did, and then he got told to hold up Gasly, so then Norris had clear air when it came to the pit stop. And it's just like... And that was completely clear as day. So it wasn't Ricciardo having a bad time at all. If anything, it was McLaren's strategy, who boxed him early to go onto the hards, which he was going to extend his stint earlier. And you could see exactly what his stint was going to be, because it's what Norris went on, extending at the mediums and going on to the soft towards the end. And it's a clear case scenario where McLaren's strategy, if he hadn't retired, ruined his race, because then he got stuck behind everyone else.
Wait. The problem is that wait. So... You're saying that so McLaren boxed Daniel to cover Gasly because Gasly stopped early instead of letting Daniel have his stint, and then that compromised his race because the only reason they got him to cover off Gasly was to help Lando out. Is that what you're saying?
So So they had to cover off Gasly because obviously Ricciardo was at the very beginning of the DRS train. So he had to cover him off. Otherwise, he'll be then pretty much at the very back of it when coming out of the pits. So McLaren covered him off when they actually could have just left him carrying on and left going on to the medium.
Question.
So they didn't do that to help. All right, go on.
Simple question, because Gasly was in the middle of a McLaren sandwich. So let's say Gasly pits and it's Ricciardo ahead, Lando right behind him, and they just keep going. Is Lando overtaking Daniel, yes or no?
No.
Tomo?
I mean, I'm pretty sure he is.
I mean, because also Lando could have just overtaken then Gasly, but he didn't do that because it was a DRS train.
Can I come back, actually?
But also, with the whole holding up the whole Lando thing, that's because when he came out in front of Gasly, when the undercut didn't work, but then they were back towards P11, P12, they were already working out when Norris was going to pit later on, and then were asking him to hold up. They were saying to hold up like a tenth or like a second or tenth per lap. So basically, Norris then had the free air to go in front and not had the struggle from the guys behind.
And show his true pace in clean air.
Because Daniel started on mediums, didn't he?
He did, yeah. Same as Norris.
Yeah. And he pitted what lap did he pit, Matt?
19.
He pitted, 19 and Gasly on 18.
Well, it's very early to pit on the medium. For sure.
And one last, you could give it to Ricciardo. That's totally fine. Like, again, I'm not saying Ricciardo had a shocker. Like, again, you should have been here at Zandvoort, but no, Ricciardo had a really good race. But when I look at it on paper, like where McLaren were after the first 5 laps, they would have been 7th and 8th with their 2 drivers. Like Lando would have been ahead, and it would have been a better result because they would have jumped Gasly with Daniel, and Lando would have extended and gone to 7th. So the strategy the team played was to get both of their drivers in the absolute best position. Did they favour Lando a little bit? Probably, because he had a little bit more pace, in my opinion.
No, he didn't. But you're also forgetting, Lando made multiple mistakes during the race. I don't know why you're completely forgetting. He had a shit start, and that was all Lando's fault. He also went off the track.
He did have a shit start.
He went off the track, and that was his fault. And Ricciardo did nothing wrong. Like, he didn't bottle it. And ironically, in the one track... I didn't say
bottled it.
No, but you're sort of making out... You've chosen Lando over Daniel when actual Daniel's done nothing wrong, and the cars just failed him, and the teams failed him, ironically. Because obviously they're going to favour Lando because he's the one who's got more points in the championship, and also because that's the star driver they're going for.
And also he did have more pace. Like, the mistakes he made up for them. He re-overtook Alonso.
Yeah, ironically, because Ricciardo was at the beginning of the DRS train and Lando was behind all the other guys in the train.
Yeah, but even in clean air, like even Lewis was struggling to keep up with Lando in that middle part of the stint.
If Lando was better, he should have been at the front of the DRS train, but he didn't because he bottled the race start. So there you have it. Simple as.
Let us know in the comments. Do you agree with Aldas? Do you agree with Matt? I'm decided to sit on the fence for this one because you have sold a compelling story. I'll give you that back because you did actually look at the because you just chose to focus completely on Daniel for that race. You do actually have the information that we.
And I knew. And do you know what? I knew because I saw it obviously on his Instagram. He posted that he was watching F1 TV. And do you know what makes it sweeter? He must have been watching Ricciardo on board live just as engine cut out.
Ironically, my internet froze.
Oh my god! Of course it did.
So as soon as it reloaded, I was like, no.
Let's talk about Alpine. Let's move on from McLaren. Although there's not really too much to say because obviously Ocon started towards the back. Fernando had no pace in his car for some reason.
Too old.
Who out-qualified who? I mean, Ocon didn't even get into Q3. Yeah. I guess Fernando, but
yeah,
I think the
best thing about Alpine this weekend was Ocon's Schumacher tribute helmet. I think that was pretty much the highlight, and after that it was downhill. So yeah, it wasn't a great weekend by then, but yeah, Alonso, and I still love it. He knew that there was an engine. He knew that there was an engine problem before the team did. Like, he just felt it. You know, he's had experience of that. But yeah,
let's move on. Nothing to say with them lot. AlphaTauri, obviously you had Pierre Gasly qualify P9, finish P8 in the end. Pretty good race from Pierre. Yuki started at the very back, didn't he? And got up to P14. Yeah. So actually not a bad recovery drive, although there were 4 DNFs. So actually he only finished 3
ahead of Latifi. And
I mean,
a bit of a shocker one for him. Yeah, it's got to go to Gasly, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Aldas, any particular insight you've got there, or just?
Well, let me just break down Tsunoda's race to tell you why he was actually the driver of the day. No, I think actually, especially after the early weekend scare, I don't actually know what it was that Gasly wasn't able to be there on the Thursday, I think.
Yeah,
he wasn't well.
Yeah, so to bounce back from that again, it's been a bit of an up and down season for Gasly. He's still on the edge in terms of is he going to be in that Alpine or not. He's still kind of trying to fight for it. It looks like it's slipping away a little bit, but I thought this was a great race by Gasly. It was a bit strange why he wasn't able to get past Ricciardo with the DRS Open. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but he scored points during a difficult season. I think it was a good race by Gasly, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, he couldn't get past because he wasn't good enough. No, but it's after the race, though. Gasly actually said something quite interesting to Sky Sports because they're always trying to drill in, like, what's your future plans and stuff. And he's basically said, like, he's going to drive for AlphaTauri next season, but all the control is out of his hands. Like, he has very much said he wants to try going to a different team, but he said on the interview, he's like, to the best of my knowledge, I'm driving at AlphaTauri next year, but it's completely out of his hands. So, yeah, it's literally that. So maybe I just have to take that as face value.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if that won. Because, I mean, we've got like a two weekends of no F1 now, so I wonder if we'll get any progression over that. Right, Alfa Romeo, another nothing race. Bottas finishing P12 in the end, though. He was right at the back after turn 1-2, I think. I think he got caught out, didn't he?
There was some kind of collision I remember seeing Lewis's on board. There was like some kind of collision with Bottas.
It's like a concertina.
Yeah, everyone sort of like went into the back of him. I don't know who he made contact with, but always on the right-hand side and no on the left-hand side, so go fuck yourself. But no, who was it? Was it De Vries behind Bottas who saw that? Because I didn't know. I can't remember what onboard saw that incident going from the start line. But basically, yeah.
I think that was like Mick. I remember they showed Mick Schumacher's.
I think it was Mick. I think it was Mick. So I don't know if
it was
Mick,
right at the back.
Yeah, because I don't know if Mick made the contact or if he kind of like didn't stop in time.
It was Kev because he got a diffuser damage. Kev did. So Kev, I think, went over the sausage curb and then. You had Bottas hit the back of Kev and then Mick hit the back of Bottas. So it was all kind of, concertina. But I mean, out-qualified Joe, finished ahead of Joe. I think you got to give it to Valtteri.
Yeah. Zhou finished there, didn't he? Yeah, Zhou finished ahead. He scored points. Yeah.
Of course.
Points, mate.
Sorry, I was looking at qualifying. Qualifying, okay.
Real knowledge.
I mean, sweet. I'll give it to Joe then. I completely forgot he finished P10. Fair play. GG,
I know.
Joe.
I'm hearing this like Joe slander. Like finally a good race where points actually happen. It was quite funny.
He only got that point because Ricciardo retired as well. Let's be honest.
Thank you very much for that, Matt. We'll take these W's, mate. Joe Army, we'll take these W's. But
no, you know what? That's good. He actually got a full race under his belt, which doesn't usually happen in the Alfa Romeo.
It usually blows up halfway through, but. It was quite funny is that when Zhou was battling for the points with De Vries, I was like, oh my god, I really want Zhou to score points, but I kind of want Nyck to be in the points as well. And Ricciardo really came through there big time.
Oh, this has been fun. Right.
I love it.
Aston Martin. Yikes. Not a good weekend. Both out in Q1. Seb did the classic, no! Is it like...
Surely he must be used to... I don't... He always has these big reactions. It's like, mate, this happens every race. Why are you surprised? Like, of course you didn't get into Q2 again. Like, why is it a new thing? Every time it's like, what? No! Like, it's like, mate, you should know this by now.
I thought we were battling for pole.
But yeah, obviously Seb retired lap 10, Lance lap 39, both engine issues.
I haven't seen an onboard. Something between those two happened, I think, on lap 1, where I think Lance might have like just clotheslined Seb almost into the gravel. So
sounds about right.
More teammate shenanigans. I want to see an onboard of that because I think it would have been quite interesting. But
Lance, I suppose. To defend either.
Yeah. Do I give it to Lance?
You going to give it to Lance?
I mean, they're both retired, to be fair.
I mean, they're just.
I'll give it to Seb. No, I'll give it to Seb actually because like I think he had a bit more. Wait, who was in front? I completely forgot actually.
Vettel.
Seb out qualified Lance by a tenth and a bit. So I mean,
Vettel it is then.
Yeah.
There's nothing to really say, is there? All right, let's talk about Williams then. Let's get.
Should we talk about Haas first and then get Williams later?
Yeah. Oh yeah, true. I completely forgot about Haas.
So did I.
Again,
I was like,
I've got the season.
Well, look, Mick got P12 in the end. K-Mag right at the back after the damage, and Mick out qualified. No, he didn't. He qualified last.
Fraud watch.
Is there anything to say?
The car was really slow. I think K-Mag was obviously. I was about to say unlucky with the penalty, but it is what it is. And yeah, Mick, I mean, he did that overtake on Latifi, but okay. Woo. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, P12 in the end, like, not too bad considering. I think I'll give it to Mick because, you know,
I'll give it to Mick.
Far off points.
Nah, fuck him. I'll give it to Magnussen.
Wow.
Why not?
Wow. Slander.
That was even more fraudulent than the Ricciardo pick. Unbelievable.
Now we're talking about Williams, okay. Boys.
The original.
I mean, I know
Dutch
you two
champion.
saw...
You have some explaining to do. You have some... I want to hear about this.
Tweet from tweet Thursday saying, "No, you just wait.
Worldie.
Nicholas Latifi going to have a worldie." I mean, that's a open to interpretation statement. And I said he'd have a worldie.
He left that wiggle room. Do you know what I mean?
Monza last year was Nicholas's best race, I think, to date in a Williams.
What position did he finish in that one, by the way?
I think he was 11th in the end, and I think he got stiffed by the safety car because that's the only way George jumped him. So actually, he was on to a good thing this time last year.
Would have scored points.
Yeah. I don't know where to start, man, because honestly, this illustrated a lot. We've talked about it, right? About, you know, is this Williams a terrible car that Alex is doing a really good job in, Nick is just about there, or vice versa, is Albon doing like a good job and Nick is just nowhere? And the fact that someone can jump in so last minute, he's been driving the Aston Martin in the morning, which has a completely different steering wheel, completely different like setup. No wonder he locked his brakes and cocked up qualified. Still out-qualified Latifi, even with that lap being deleted. And then finishes in the points with Latifi. I mean, he was only ahead of K-Mag because K-Mag had diffuser damage.
He finished last, basically. Let's be honest.
Basically. I mean, what do we say? I don't know what to say anymore.
I think the main thing is obviously, like, I hope he did enjoy his last ever Italian Grand Prix. I mean, like,
someone commented that actually on the last episode. Someone said, like, "Oh, I wish Matt was here to say that Latifi. I hope he enjoyed his last Dutch Grand Prix."
It's my running thing. I'm not changing my tune. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the next 2 weeks it gets announced. Like, we've had these rumors for so long that De Vries is going to be replacing Latifi, and like you say, Tomo, like the original Dutch champion showed exactly why he should have been in the sport. It's really unfortunate. Well, yeah, he was champion before Max. He was, so got to count it where it is.
It's true,
but like, it was really unfortunate, obviously, for Nick not to get the drive after he won his F2 because there was no seats free. And then obviously he found a home a little bit for 2 years in FE, and now just by pure luck he was able to get this outing, and it was just the perfect outing for him. You know, yeah, obviously he did get a bit of a helping hand having a bit of a FP1 session in the Aston. However, you do have to include that all because it's just part of the racing history as it goes. It's not like, oh, but if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be on pace. It's like, doesn't matter. It's part of how it all comes together.
It's a completely different car as well. Like,
and also there was also where
totally different.
I think even Seb was talking about how, like, when he got back into the car for FP2, they had to change the wheel position because of how Nick had to try and set it up because Nick kept pressing the wrong buttons from what he was used to on the previous car at Williams. But I think, like, yeah, this really just. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind now, including like the team and anyone in F1. Like, yeah, that seat is well and truly Nick's. He's a decent and feisty racer. Latifi has shown
Which Nick
are you on about? That could also be open to interpretation. Nick Cassidy's had an absolute banger of a season at Formula E.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it just goes to show though, like Latifi, just like I think, you know, you said it's very much the vice versa approach. That like the car is decent, it's just having a really awful driver pedaling it. And yeah, I just want him out.
It was an embarrassing performance, which is what we've been seeing pretty much most of the year. Now the car has gotten better since the beginning of the year. Like, don't get me wrong, because I think what Alex did in Australia was just nuts, because that's when the car was at its absolute worst. The car is now a lot better. Like, it's on some tracks when the car is in the right window, when there isn't as much kind of downforce dependence, because it still doesn't have as much downforce as like some of the midfield teams, but it does have good straight line speed. It can score points, as we've seen. And to be fair, Nick, like, what was really interesting is that at one point he was kind of under pressure from Zhou, and then all of a sudden he was actually kind of getting away from Zhou. He was pushing forward to the car ahead. I forget who was, Gasly I think it was. So
Gasly.
He was actually attacking someone at the end, yeah. So that's just incredible. I think Nyck has done, again, a great job to put himself in the shop front for that seat. I still think, Logan Sargent, maybe that's more just me being a Logan Sargent fan, so there's definitely some bias there. But I'd love to see him in Formula 1 at some point. So I look forward to seeing what he can do in FP1 in Austin. But yeah, I think Nyck has really kind of put himself at the forefront. As far as Latifi, that's exactly what we've been seeing. Terrible in qualifying and nowhere near in the race. This was the race. Jokes aside for a worldy performance, this was the race to take advantage of the car when it actually could score points. It was on the level of the Alfa Romeo and the Alfa Tauri. And Nyck, as these opportunities don't come around often in Formula 1, timing is everything. Sometimes you do have just that one race, and Nyck absolutely took it. And he has been a little bit scrappy. For anyone that's been watching Formula E this season, he has been a bit scrappy. So it's not like he's coming off this amazing form, but he took the opportunity exactly when he needed to. And again, for me, it's just embarrassing from Latifi. And what's really interesting now is that there is this now public pressure to get rid of Latifi. If they genuinely keep him, I think there's going to be some serious questions about the ambitions and the management of that team in terms of exactly. They can't do it. Again, there's going to be some serious questions about what you actually want to achieve by picking up a driver that black and white, the data is showing you just through one race that he's not good enough. So there's that public pressure is now interesting with Jos Capito, and he has got to drop him as soon as possible because that pressure is just going to keep mounting.
And I think what's just goes to show as well, it also proves that Nyck de Vries is a better driver than George Russell because he was able to do something which George couldn't do for 2 seasons.
Well, Albon is better than both of them, so there you go. Hold that.
Albon is better than both of them.
I'll take that. I mean, again, there's no... It is crazy to me, right? Because they were first and second when Nyck won Formula 2. He won the title. He had 266 points ahead of Nyck with the other Nyck, Latifi, with 214. Both won the same number of races. Both won 4 races apiece.
That's a pretty chunky gap, by the way. Let's not just first of all throw that aside.
But it's nothing on what Drogovic has just done. I'm not being funny. That's a chunky gap. That's a funny sentence to say. That's a chunky gap. That is 52 points, right? Which is significant. But I think Latifi wins 4 races. I just think I don't think he's able to do it at this level. I just think that's now abundant. It was already clear. Let's be honest. But now having another driver jump in at such late notice and a driver who's clearly Nyck de Vries is a very complete driver. He's raced in a lot of different categories. He's got a lot of experience. He's 27 now. He's built a good foundation that you like to think he can jump into most different types of cars and quite quickly be quick. But the fact that he was able to hold on, do this, you've got to give a lot of credit to Nyck de Vries for doing this, for achieving what he achieved. But like we say, they can't keep Latifi now. If that team wants to show any ambition moving forward, it's just... Meme, the memes have been fun. It's been fun, but the time's done. It's stopped. Don't get me wrong. He's got to go.
I want to say on that, I don't agree with any of the attacking on Latifi in terms of his personal character and all of those jokes.
No, of course not.
The only things that I've ever talked about and the only things I've ever criticised Latifi on is always his pace, is always his performances.
It's not good enough.
Don't get me wrong. Everything that he said about the whole what's been happening online and the abuse that he's taken. I totally agree with that. But when we're talking about performances and when we're judging absolute at the top level of sport, he is nowhere near good enough. He has not had any development across, I haven't seen the development since 2020. The gap was just as big in 2021 against George Russell and Albon from race 1. Let's be honest, from Bahrain testing, I was Albon's got him already. So the quicker I think they announce it, the better I think it will be for the team and also the better for him as well, because you're just dragging him as well, almost kind of creating this new saga. So announce whoever their driver is. Is it going to be De Vries? I don't know, but I think he deserves a shot.
Surely it's got to be De Vries. I mean, also you do have to open up to a level of scrutineering, if you are in a really privileged position to be one of the 20 drivers to be involved in Formula 1, getting to do that, you open yourself up to being scrutinised. And if you're not performing, then you do need to take some criticism from that. And obviously, we don't condone any of the actual insults straight towards him or anything like that. I know I always joke saying he needs to get out, but that's not me on his personal thing. It's all about his performance and lack thereof. And where you have cases where Nyck de Vries or even previous drivers, Antonio Fias Acosta we've mentioned before, who haven't been able to have the opportunity, where you've had penny drivers replace it and haven't performed as well and are not progressing the sport, then of course they have to be open to getting that criticism. So it has to be De Vries, surely.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I also am a huge fan of Logan Sargent, I think that, Williams need two solid drivers to build that team up, move that car forward. I don't think they're in a position, if Sargent had walked F2 this year, then I think that's a different case. But I think give him another year in F2 at least, see how he progresses. I think now we know that if they do have a De Vries Albon lineup for next year, because remember they were considering Albon and De Vries for that seat anyway. When Jules left,
between them two, wasn't it?
Yes, and I think this shows that they would have got a very good driver if they had gone for Nyck. Obviously, I'm happy they went for Alex, and I think that De Vries, Albon will be a very good little lineup. You could learn a lot from those drivers. I think they've got good experience across different disciplines. Even Alex, when he had his year out, he was racing a bit of DTM. He was kind of getting himself about, doing some different things. So yeah, I think if Williams want a future where they are semi-competitive, they just can't. This is his third season now at the same team. It's not good enough, and that's it.
One last thing.
On.
This will be the last thing. I think with De Vries also doing really well, I think it should put a lot more respect on like the level of like the Formula E drivers. Like again, I just started watching Formula E this season. This was like my first one watching from start to finish, and like I before then I heard all the jokes, that Formula E drivers is like the retirement home for Formula 1 drivers, but that just shows you De Vries was shaky this season. Like there were so many drivers that were better than him in Formula E, and he stood out and he absolutely smashed it in Formula 1. So across the board in IndyCar and Formula 1 and Formula E, there is so many class drivers, and like the level of drivers should be respected by Formula 1 fans, even if you're not a fan of those series for whatever reason.
Yeah, this is why senior series like IndyCar, like Formula E, should get more super license points, as far as I'm concerned.
Do you have a video about that,
subject. Maybe I do, Alex. That's a subject for another day. Right, thank you all for coming. We're almost at an hour and a half now, so we'll let you get on with your day. Thank you all for coming. Don't forget, like the video if you watch it on YouTube, subscribe, 5-star, Apple Podcasts, Pixo, MySpace, all that.